you all really liked the movie.
I loved it.
Yeah. All right. So let me throw out a question. I went through my notes and I have plenty to say about it, but people are calling this a musical. What do you think?
Mm.
Yeah. Okay. Who wants to chime in on that? Arlene?
I loved the use of music and dance. I
Mhm.
thought it was quite interesting. Um, Not only the dialogue, not the play itself, not the words itself, but the way they blended music with what was going on. I
Right.
thought it was very interesting and
I'm
well
glad
done.
you mentioned that because really a lot of the story is told in song and dance. I mean, who needs to go through the Bangkok sex change facility any other way? It would have been boring. I thought that was a very funny song. All the
Yes.
plasties you can have. And the last one's the Adam's apple. I think Risa had her hand raised on the screen. Hi. Go
Thought
ahead.
they called it operatic. I thought it was Bollywood all over again, but with magnificent music instead of all the fun. Because it was you got the story and then you got the music and you got the dance, and I loved it because I love Bollywood. I love that style,
Uh-huh.
so I loved the whole thing.
Good.
Mm.
Who else raised their hand? Martha and your daughter and your son? Do you want to chime in and
Yeah. Yeah, I just want, this is Dave, my son-in-law. Did you just finished or in the middle? He just finished his job. So he's joining us too.
okay. All right. And Fern, did you raise your hand? Did I see?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, I did. Um, yes, I think it was definitely a musical. It was done I thought very cleverly. Mainly the music was reflecting the interior story that was going on. So that was a particularly interesting way to present the story. And it definitely was it wasn't a sung through musical, which is something that's like an opera where there's not speaking, but it's all sung, but it's surely a musical. And it was great.
I think it's better than a musical because the so much of the story happened in song. Let's go back to the first one. She's rehearsing her presentation to defend a guy who actually killed his wife and to get him off. She's on the defense team and she's practicing her speech as she walks through the marketplace. And she's kind of angry because she has to like get this creep off. And her boss says, well, let's prove the point and call it suicide. So she writes this brilliant defense. Maybe some of the attorneys want to chime in and how a defense can make it sound like something that it isn't. But it was brilliantly written and it establishes her as being a great lawyer. But that's part of the story because she's disgusted with having to do this for a scumbag. And a lot of us those of us who've had clients, whether they're law clients or business clients or whatever, sometimes you don't like them so much, but it's a job and you do it because you have kids in private school or it's what you do, while you're waiting for something good to come along. And that resonated with me, certainly. Um, but then she's tempted because she gets this phone call, right? It's this weird phone call. She's in the bathroom. They're watching her. Meet me at the newsstand in 10 minutes. And then she questions the call and the song, she questions it in song. It's about 12 minutes in. She said, why not take this? I've been a pawn of the system for so long. As my wife says, when she was in law school, some of the fellow students were saying, I've been without for long enough. And that was one of their responses when they said they were voting for Reagan in the 80s. Um, so people begin to think about themselves when there's something driving them away from uh, their source of income. With her though, it's not just money; it's morality. If I have to do something corrupt, I may as well be the beneficiary instead of the mob leader who killed his wife and is trying to get off by calling it suicide. Fern.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment on the job of lawyers, as one myself, that the job is an interesting and paradoxical combination of having to be neutral about the positions you take, but very partisan for your clients.
Right.
And that's very difficult. And people who think too much about it get out of law.
Uh-huh. Rather than say, this client could be abused by the other side, and I want to make sure they're using the law correctly in their defense, because ultimately that's about our system. No, it's too idealistic.
Yeah, it doesn't happen. But lawyers, they either say, I'm gonna take the cases. There may be some you don't take, but if I didn't take the cases of people who had, behaved in some ways I didn't like, I could have sat home and read books all day long.
Okay, Steve Zimmerman, you're an attorney. How do you feel about that? And then we'll go to Linda.
Well, yeah, I take Fern's point, although I always have an ethical backbone, and unlike some lawyers, I do decide what cases I want to be involved in, and I've never really ascribed to the idea of your case walks in the door and that's your job. I don't think so.
And was that true your whole career?
Yeah.
Wow, how lucky for you.
By the
Linda.
way, I'm not saying that I simply would take anything. That one has limits, but by and large, if you want to earn a living, you don't get into a lot of detail about the positions.
Okay, I'm glad you said that, because you make your choices based upon how they impact you. And yeah, it's a little bit selfish, but ultimately, if you don't act on your own behalf, nobody is going to for you, and someone else will take the case. And in a way, that's what Rita faces here. If she stays as the junior attorney to this lawyer who hires her or whom she works for, she's going to get this kind of case all the time. So it's a matter of, wait, I'm going to do something in my own interest. And that's the second song where she asks herself, why not? Linda, you're muted, Linda. You're muted. Lower left corner, click on the microphone.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I was going to say it's hard for me to reconcile a musical with a topic that is so horrifying. I mean, as a gangster, he killed people, and that scene about the bodies and the families trying to find people, and the real disregard of people. When you think of a musical, perhaps like Wicked, I mean, something that's a little bit lighter. But I don't know if there is a genre to classify when you take a theme like this, which really has such, depth in terms of people who are immoral and get away with the crime. Maybe I'm being too idealistic, but it kind of dampened for me classifying it as a light film, which I would classify. Most musicals are rather light.
Yeah, well, that's
And
because they have a
this
real
one
profit motive.
was very creative. It was very creative
Yeah.
because of that blending of all of these different kinds of stories. The mystery, and then of course, it's a trans person, and then in addition to the crimes, there's quite a bit going on in this film, and that's why I liked it, because there was a lot going on. But I don't know if they have another classification
Well,
beyond
maybe not.
musical, which I would give it a partial for a musical.
I just threw that out to provoke this kind of discussion. And what you're saying, if I understand correctly, is this is a film like no other. It's a musical like no other. It's unique, and it really grabbed my attention because it engaged me. And music was part of it, but not all of it.
Yes.
Marina?
I thought maybe music helped us deal with the heart-wrenching issues raised by the movie. If it were not for the colorful dances and music, we may have had harder time to follow through watching the movie.
Well, I made notes of every song. There are 16 of them, and they're all about 2 minutes long. and Hollywood musicals tend to be a little longer than that. But again, it's not just a song and dance. It's someone explaining their deepest feelings without having to show us in a scene, a dramatic scene with another player. So it's more intimate and more confidential because they're singing their hearts out for us. And it's so much of the story hinges on Rita. The first third of the film is Rita taking the job, Fern. She's torn. One, she's torn because she doesn't want to do anything for money. She wants justice. And then she realized there's justice for her in this. That would be the second song. And then, interestingly, the third song is a rap song. When he tells her, when she meets Montez for the first time, there's no going back. If I tell you, there's no going back, but they're millions. And then he pushes the bank statement in front of her. It says $2 million. And that's her thinking it over. The wheels are churning. How much risk is there involved? And he says, well, you'll lose $2 million. So she decides she can sell out to him because she already has sold out in her life. This is not new territory for her. It's just now she has something to gain from the big lie, which she sees it as a big lie at this point, right? She's not advocating for a transgender person or somebody who wants to be. She's taking a job, and she has to be won over. And so she's taking a job. And then she goes to Tokyo for that great, Bangkok, for that great scene. And what does it end with? It ends with that circular view from overhead that begins to rotate to suggest all the cities. The cities are on the periphery of that circle. And, this is her research. And it's a stunning image and very clever, I thought. But so that's song number 4. And she's on the job, and she's sort of doing it with enthusiasm because she turns Bangkok down, but she goes to Israel for the doctor she lands on. And there's a very interesting song, and this sort of brings us into it as, I believe, excuse me if I'm wrong, non-transgendered people, but cisgender people. The doctor says, I can change his body, but I can't fix his soul. And the judgment there, what's the judgment? Help me out. Paul, go ahead.
Yeah, Dr. Wasserman, I thought that encounter was pivotal in the progression of the movie because he told him that there are ways that I cannot change you. I can do everything, appearances, this, that, and the other, but I can't actually change you. So you will be you forever.
Yeah.
For all intents and purposes. And if I could just go back for a second.
Yeah.
I think I'd suggest maybe the use of the word operatic as opposed to musical. Although musicals like South Pacific and Carousel were very, very earnest.
Yes.
And dealt with some very, very profound and significant issues. Right. War, betrayal, so on, crime.
More recently, there was a musical about a neurotic woman in the household. I forget what it was called, played here in LA. And there have been lots of, Rent and lots of films that are musicals that are gay themed.
Showboat.
Okay.
But if you'll pardon me, I think just to borrow from an old movie that we all remember, she received an offer she couldn't refuse.
Yeah, right. She couldn't refuse it, but the songs justify. It's not that he wasn't pressuring her. He just said, "If I tell you, you got to do it."
Yeah, but as she peels the onion, the exceptional nature of the assignment becomes apparent to her, and then the pivotal point is there's another point where she sees some element of justice created by the transformation.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you pointed to the Dr. Wasserman scene because she rebuts his argument. And she says, no. You change the soul, you change society. You change society, you change souls. You change your gender, you change society. You change society, then you change souls, and it goes back to society again. So she becomes an advocate for this process. And the text is there's justice here. It's not like you're indulging some 14-year-old who wants to pretend they're of another gender, which the Republicans are all up in arms about. It's like, here's an adult who, in his most profound ways, needs this to live a full life. And at that point, she has become an advocate for him. It's like the doctor's objection is her affirmation, which I thought was a wonderful moment. And it's the first time we see her being a true defendant, really rallying for the rights and needs of her client. And, in thinking about this before I saw it this afternoon, I said, it really needed more. They needed to demonstrate that he was more a family guy and how much his kids meant to him. But when I saw it this afternoon, there's a whole bunch of stuff when he excuses himself from talking to her and goes arm in arm with his wife, with the kids, to go play somewhere. And they're playing soccer and they're lying on a blanket and they're looking up at the stars. And it was enough. It didn't need a whole scene, but there may have been, I don't know if there was music over that or not. But it's poignant where he has to leave them in order for this to work. So we're meant to understand the terrible risk and the danger of doing this and what he will lose and what he will gain from it. And then, of course, she gets the passports and the bank statements. And there's a great moment when she says, your kids will forget you. And then they cut to a close-up of him, and he's so sad. It's not it doesn't take a long time, but it registers. Wonderful performance. And it humanizes him. He's not just this low, whispery voice. He's hurt by it. And then he sings a song about, I lack for nothing, but I don't have desire. I didn't quite understand that, but later on it made itself clear, although I'm not clear now about what does he desire. He doesn't desire to be the same. That's for sure. And he cries in that song, and Rita understands his tears. And then Rita goes to Jesse. Sorry, Rita goes to Jesse, the wife, and tells her that he's dead, and she cries. So this is the big cover-up, right? The big lie that this enables him to have the surgery and live a different life. And it's the only way he can be fair to his family if they can forget him and move on with their lives. That's the first third of the movie. That happens at around 40 minutes.
Jim, I think there were a few people who wanted to comment that you may have missed. You may want to catch them. Arlene and the Bergman family.
Okay.
Leslie.
Let's talk to Arlene first. Lower left corner, Arlene, if you have something to say. Unmute, Arlene.
Arlene, unmute.
Click on the microphone.
Muted back.
Okay, that's
Okay.
good.
Okay, good. Thanks. Oh, I forgot what I was going to say, but everything
We're
that
talking about attorneys.
Oh, yes. Sometimes you pick a client, but then they change on you and you're stuck in it. One of my worst cases was a Jewish couple who were both physicians. They had one child, a daughter, and we worked out all the money stuff, and it was not great, but we did it. And then my client said, now we're going to start with custody, and he is not going to get any custody. And I said to her, on what basis? And she said, he is not even going to come to the bat mitzvah.
Horrors.
Right?
Yeah.
And I remember this.
Yeah.
And I said, you know what? You're going to get yourself somebody else.
Yeah.
Because I'm not going to do that.
That would be ugly, is what you're telling us. It would be too ugly to mediate that.
Correct.
Right, but sometimes it goes the other way, as it does here. Rita, you're next. In that he grew on her. He won her over to his cause. So that was a surprise. Risa, you're muted, dear.
Said you didn't know what he meant by I have no desire.
Yeah.
I heard that as his only desire was for his wife. He was madly in love with her, and with the separation from her, his libido was gone.
Uh, that's part of it for sure. Um, maybe I can remember the moment where it's referred to later and clear it up for us. But that was a complicated part of it. So, does anybody else want to comment, or can we move on?
Leslie.
Leslie.
Yeah, I just wondered, when you were talking about the duality of society versus the person versus duality. I also saw this as, believe it or not, a feminist film,
Absolutely.
because when he changes to a she, his whole purpose is turned upside down. And he's righting all the wrong, she's righting all the wrongs that he committed. And obviously Rita and Jesse, and I forgot the third girlfriend, Alfreda, and
Epiphania.
right.
Epiphania.
As an epiphany. Yeah.
It becomes a sisterhood. And so, what happens when society is run by women instead of male drug lords, and so it just sets up that
It's there.
yeah,
It's absolutely there. But I saw it as something even more general in that it's about what is humanity? What is a person? And you have to, and this is a question I thought I'd lead with, but I'm glad I didn't, in that we as not cisgendered people, that means we have lived the gender we were born into. How did you see the transformation? Didn't this person become a different person? Of course, we didn't see that much of him in the prior life, but it's like it's a real accomplishment that suddenly you don't see him as a her or her as a him that used to be. You see her as a person, and yeah, she has her needs and her we'll get to the nonprofit she founds, but it's like I don't know where it happened for me where you really empathize with this new character, and you stop seeing it as I don't know, as a straight man, it's like I had my doubts. Well, how am I supposed to feel about this person? So it made me question what is the male gaze? What are my expectations of a woman? Shouldn't it be of a person? Yeah, Marina.
At the beginning, when the drug lord is explaining to Rita his desire to change his gender, he says that his discomfort in life, because he always wanted to be a woman, caused him to do what he did, caused him to be that horrible person.
Yeah.
So it's possible that the authors of the movie are trying to attribute his vile past to the way he didn't he was unable to realize himself in a different way. But there is also a possibility that they wanted to affect a total transformation for him, so he could manifest a better side of his soul, and he wouldn't have been able to do it being a man.
Well, it's a big change to go through just to give penance for the crimes you've committed. He does say that when he was a young boy, and he knew from the very beginning he was a woman, wanted to be a woman. He said, but where I come from, a boy had to be tough. And especially in my environment, I had to be the toughest son of a bitch in the valley. So I was meaner than any of the others. And she even recites what he's done and the inroads he's made into the police and politicians and how he defeated his rival cartel. So, and he says, and I got tired of it. I don't want to be the meanest son of a bitch anymore because that's not me. And I thought that was so telling. That sort of tied it all up in terms of his motivation. Marvin, Marcia Pierre, did you?
Yeah, I think the movie exalts the requirements of being woke in many respects. And I list to support that outrageous statement that females are good, the men are bad, but redeemable. And I think it's more of an opera than anything else. And operas do have situations where the bad guy wins. It's not musicals tend not to do that, I think.
Right. Roz, you're muted, unmute.
I read that it was written to be a 4-part opera, and then it was changed. So that
the author, there is an author credited with a novel called Écoute or Écoutez, which is listen or hear. But I did not research that further than just the credits. So that would be interesting if that was the libretto for a 4-part opera. It certainly is histrionic, but it's not, it's like I thoroughly believed all these players. The performances were that good across the board. Fern?
Yeah, I just want to, Marvin, I don't think that Jenny, his wife, was a good character, a person of good character. I don't see it as only the men were good and women. She was not good at all.
Well, certainly at the end.
No, I think the men were bad, but you do disagree with what I was saying that the woman was good, because that's an absolute requirement of being truly woke.
It's also a story about somebody who changed their gender and was humanized, and there were women who were good and women who weren't.
Well, but the star did only good things.
She was the star.
Well,
stars do.
Not all stars in the real world are good.
Well, but this is not the real world. So like Bernie said,
why you would politicize that, that theme, because I just didn't see it that way.
Yeah. It's like, let's not let the facts of the world get in the way of a good movie. I always say that. Martha Bergman's daughter, Anne, is it?
Yeah, but a lot of people are using
Anna.
Anna.
So just going back to what you were saying about sort of like when you started to really feel for the character, I think one of the things that helps you to feel for the character is that it's played by a transgender actress who lived not the gangster life, but lived the knowing who they truly were inside and eventually being able to come and be that person. And I think having her play both roles and like the emotion that she was able to bring out in all of that really just sort of pushed forward why you would have such strong feelings and really have a better understanding of the character because her emotions were so strong.
Okay, let me ask the group a question, and please don't be ashamed to admit this. How many did not know that the person who played Emilia is a transgender woman?
I didn't.
Yeah, a lot. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, 6. So what it means is this person has lived this experience. And that's why I think what you were saying, Anna, is that's why it was so genuine and so convincing.
Yeah.
And no acting needed whatsoever. I mean, I don't know if that's the kind of woman she wanted to be, but certainly it was an admirable character that we could aspire to, seeking justice for these lost families. So so that reveal that this is a transgender person, does that change the story for anybody? No?
No.
Okay.
Jim, I had my hand up. I did know that this performer was transgender, but what I was wondering, and I don't know the answer, is in the beginning, when he was this tattooed, weird gangster, was that how the performer actually looked at that point in the movie, or had he already transitioned to a woman and was that all makeup? Does anybody know?
Well, it was facial makeup, I suspect.
Yes. Was.
Yeah,
if
because
you
I
ever
mean,
want to see what she used to be known as Carlos, same last name as she has now, but if you ever want, she was an actress when before she transitioned. So if you ever want to know what she looked like prior, you can find her old movies all on her IMDb.
Wait a second.
She was a male
She was
actor.
a man, right? So in the beginning of the film, you see this bizarre man, but I assume that was makeup.
Yeah, that was all makeup. She had already transitioned years before this movie.
I sort of figured.
Okay. Anybody else want to chime in before we move on?
Elaine wants to say something.
I saw the casting director, the person in charge of casting, and she was instructed that it would be a transgender person to play the part. And she also said that very shortly there's going to be an Academy Award for casting, which I thought was an interesting thought. Yeah. There never have been, but casting is so crucial to the success of a movie.
They've been lobbying for that for several years, and this is certainly one where it was a central part of the success of the movie, finding the right people. I thought Zoe Saldana did a great job. I'm tired of seeing her in TV movies, but wow, this is, beyond anything I've ever seen her do. And I think Selena Gomez was very convincing as well. Although her accent, her Spanish accent, was criticized by some Spanish-speaking people. I don't know what that means. It's just, you're a target when you do this kind of work, and you have to have a thick skin. So let's move on. So the first third is just getting him to the point. She's an advocate, and he does the surgery. And there's a lovely moment. Remember the Jewish surgeon who visits him made notes in Hebrew in that little book? He turns it over to Rita at the end, and there's an image of the book burning. So that's like, it's evidence of Dr. Wasserman's conviction. I don't need my notes anymore. I'm a believer, and the doubts only reflect the book only reflects my doubts. So in a way, it's banishing the doubts about the wisdom of these operations for Emilia. It was a lovely moment. And then she announces the death. How about that stunning reveal after the surgery where you see her putting on her bra for the first time, the only time you see it, from the back?
Right.
A great image. I mean, less is more. You don't have to see everything, and it's just the act of assuming a woman's clothes like that. So again, there's all these filmmaking touches that it drips with compassion for the characters. 4 years later, they're at the Paul, did you want to say something?
I thought burning the book was to dispose of evidence.
Yeah, that's
could be. They asked for it.
I mean, among other things, it's a number of levels, but that's one.
Yes,
one to add it.
Sorry, I romanticized it. But the 4 years later happened. Yes, Frank, I'm sorry I overlooked you before.
Our character, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Our character is a male, very much so, and who wants to and desires to be a woman. But I don't understand if that character then becoming such an SOB and antisocial, etc., kind of character, it would be more believable if it was kind of a softer kind of man. I just, maybe that's the trope we normally see, but does that
I'll tell you, I remember the doctor says, I can't heal your soul. And later in the movie, when Jesse says, I'm going to take the kids, his voice lowers and he threatens her and he jumps on her. And it's very thug-like behavior. So that old way of being with people came out.
Mhm.
So it was part of who he was. And yes, I guess she fought it, but as long as she was engaged in finding the bodies of those missing people, she felt fulfilled and didn't have to deal with that. There's at one point in the movie, Rita says, "Don't you feel bad about the people you killed?" You know, when they decide to do this, and she says, "Yes, but I don't think about that."
Uh-huh.
So, in a way, excuse me for bringing the lawyer thing back. Sometimes you don't approve of the morality of your client, but you have to see them you have to help them find some justice for whatever they've done because you don't want the state to be too powerful.
But more to the point of my question was, did that, apparently it did to most people, seem feasible or possible that you'd have this male character seeking to be a female, and rather than trying to modify, his life when he was a he to become more woman-like, I suppose, short of sex change.
Well, we saw him walk off with his wife, play soccer with his kids, lie in the blanket and look at the stars. That's to say, this is a family guy.
Mhm.
And he'd be there in that situation because he wants to be with his kids.
I
And
agree, Frank.
okay, please, everybody mute yourselves so we can keep the conversation going. Steve Zimmerman. And then Cindy,
Yeah,
wait, Steve, let Cindy go first. She hasn't spoken yet.
I'm sure everyone was painfully aware with searching for the bodies scenes of what the real life is going on in Syria now. It was just very spooky that it kind of, the art imitates our current life.
Well, that's what good movies do. It resonates with us, and it's not just in Syria, but it's a good, I'm glad you brought that up. Steve?
yeah, I was going to say, kind of relating to Frank's question.
Lynn will be next. I'm sorry, Lynn.
I go back to that discussion between Dr. Weissman and Zoe Saldana, Rita. That's sort of the crux, the philosophical crux of the whole movie, is that tension between to what extent you can change. Okay, I mean you can change the outer part, but what are you really like inside your skin? And clearly he even though she had the surgery, she had the elements of her own self-destruction in there. And the transformation was imperfect and incomplete, right? And so it's not really going to work completely. You're not going to change yourself completely. She changed partially. She became a more sensitive human being, but she never dealt with her own hypocrisy. She tried to assuage her guilt with looking for dead bodies, but she kind of put a lot of them there in the first place, right?
Right.
So she never really confronted that guilt on a deeper level. So I don't know. But that discussion between Weissman and Rita earlier on was sort of the philosophical crux of the whole thing. To what extent can you really change? And I think the short answer is you can change to some extent, but not completely.
Okay. But so the doctor was a little bit right about your soul and the remnants of her soul from her gangster years. But did this, realizing he was a murderer of many of thousands of people, some of whose bodies we saw, did that affect your empathy for Emilia? Oh, okay, Lynn?
Yeah, I think one of the things that bothered me was that you only saw the results of his brutality. He was never the monster that he was. And on screen, he was not a monster. He became a woman, and then he started to redeem himself by, giving back the pieces of bodies. But the fact is, he wasn't just a murderer. He was a monster. he gave directions to people to tear children and women and whole families apart, literally limb from limb. So he was more than just a murderer. And so when he became a woman, it was almost like he became horrified by his own previous persona. So he had to redeem. Now, I had also, on the other hand, I'm also a lawyer, and I know that here in the States, we have a rule about everyone having a day in court, and everyone is allowed an attorney to represent them and to know the rules. This didn't take place in the US. Therefore, we don't know what the rules are. So it was more the choice to represent someone is on the shoulders of the lawyer,
Right.
not on the state.
Right. I want to repeat what I said before, is that he always knew he was a woman, and he only became a gangster because he had to be tough in the culture he grew up in.
Mhm.
And to survive, he had to be the toughest son of a bitch there was.
He was worse than a tough son of a bitch. He was an actual monster. When you saw what was going on with these families, that their children disappeared.
Okay, but did that affect your empathy for Emilia?
Yeah.
Did it?
Okay. I found it hard to have any sympathy or any feelings for him. And it was all the more the hypocrisy of the woman. In other words, was she really trying to redeem herself, or was this just she was used to being the star of the show?
No, I think you have to, you can write your own story about that, but we can't know.
Yeah.
All we know is what was on the screen. I think the filmmakers absolutely intended that we empathize with her 105%. She is a melodramatic diva, although she acts with a lot of humility. Again, she said when she was a man, I can't stand myself. I couldn't take the meanness that was asked of me anymore. So he had this duality from square one. Just when he was a man, he had that duality, and when he was a woman, he had the past as part of his duality, and it comes out when he threatens her at the end of the movie. So, the doctor's only partly right. I can fix part of your soul, the part that was injured by being born into a male body. I go back to the doctor scene a lot because it's like it asks of us, who is a person and what do we owe them? What are our obligations uh, as people in a society? How do we treat a person like this? And I think the film makes us realize, hey, I may not like men who want to be women, or I may not like women who want to become men, and I don't get it. It's not for me. But after they do it, don't I owe them the same equal rights? As who just said that about in this country, we owe everybody a shot at justice and certainly a proper defense according to the Constitution. Who has anybody? Okay, Paul.
The thought occurs to me that when he becomes she, and then is on a path of in a way that may be perceived as seeking redemption.
Yeah.
I don't think that we can call it that.
Mm-hmm.
She doesn't present it as she doesn't present the rationale, except that she can't, she knows that she had done something bad, but away from Rita, there's no other acknowledgement of her past crimes. And I think, thinking of Crime and Punishment, so on, to actually be on a path of redemption, there needs to be an inclusive acknowledgement of the public.
Well, but again, it was a choice. He couldn't stand who he was, so maybe that's selfish. But he had to be so mean. He repulsed himself.
Yeah.
So there's a certain amount of self-hatred in it for being so mean and not being able to express himself fully, to live his own life fully. Marina?
Can I add something? Which
Yes,
the other,
Leslie.
the other part is where Jesse says, we're talking about he's the change. Remember when Jesse says that after they had kids, he changed.
He changed.
He changed.
Yeah.
Yeah. And again, the children are so central. Children,
Right.
the children that have disappeared, his children, the fact that Rita has no children but ends up with children in the end.
Yeah.
Children is another central theme, and the impact of the not the impact of children, but maybe it is the personhood of children. But he changes when he becomes a father.
Mm-hmm.
And Jesse says that.
Yeah.
And so, we can be curious about whether that was something that propelled him to finally actively look for the change, look for a physical change.
I don't think that's what propelled him, but he knew it was part of the story, that he couldn't do this change without taking care of his kids, whom he was passionate about. And he felt a profound responsibility, like any parent, to take care of them post-change. Jeffrey?
Yeah, I'd like to make a couple of diffuse comments here. The first thing is I didn't see it as a musical. I saw it as speech that sometime had music with it. It was almost an extension of speech, but there was the music that accompanied it. The second thing I want to say is that I'd never seen, and I, going to a movie, it's so much about what kind of mood you're in. I was totally unprepared for this film. I'd never experienced a film like it, where they so quickly, well, first of all, it's so beautifully photographed, and then they're talking, and then suddenly they're singing, and it's but it's different than a show kind of thing. And it was like intellectually jarring. It was, because I'm just not used to seeing a film that's structured the way this was. So it really caught me off guard. And I think that at the end of the day, I connected with it much more on an intellectual level than I ever did on an emotional level with the characters. I didn't really buy that huge transition of the of the criminal to becoming such a righteous individual. I couldn't buy that. But on an intellectual level, I just found the movie groundbreaking. I've never seen anything like it, ever.
Well, there's not been anything like it, and you'll see it be get a lot of nominations. It's got 5 Golden Globes awards already, nominations. Marina, and then Linda.
I second Jeffrey's emotions. I also think it's a unique movie, but I wanted to go back to the historical background. We know about Women of Juarez, the massive number of disappearing women, where the culture is that women are disposable. Then in Mexico, we know there are disappearing groups of people just casually being in the wrong place, happening to see something. And I think in the movie, the transformation of Emilia happened when she helped a mother get closure for her son. And the mother kissed her hand. And that profoundly changed the emotions. And that's how she found her new role in the society. whether that role is true and honest and redeeming, the song at the fundraiser tells us about everybody present who are corrupt and who are going to pay. And maybe that's what Emilia is doing. She has found a new role. She is enjoying this new role, and she's going to pay for some of the sins. But maybe she still is the same monster, just hidden somewhere below.
No, she doesn't kill anybody or order them killed. But I'm glad you brought up that scene where she's talking about they'll pay. This is when they have the gala benefit fundraiser, and Emilia tells Rita, "Oh, I invited all the drug lords and corrupt politicians I know because that's where the money is. You know, that's why bank robbers rob banks. That's where the money is." So the light goes on in Rita's head, and she goes into this wonderful dance number on the tables, you know, spinning around the room, very angry. And this is a song of defiance. She's no longer their stooge or their tool. This is a vengeance that she's going to make them pay for what they have done for their corruption, and the money will go towards their cause. A great number, great dance number, and there are any number of scenes where the background goes dark and we just focus, the light stays on the main character. That's in the reveal scene at the dinner where Emilia sort of, let's say, Rita discovers that Emilia is Montez. And when that happens, the lights go down around them, and they have this whole conversation, which they couldn't have had while people were there listening. So it's a matter of, this is like lifted out of reality in a way so that we can get these plot points across. But it's not just plot points, it's relationship points, because in the beginning, Rita is paranoid. She says, you've been spying on me and you just came back to get rid of your last witness so you can live a clean life. So this is Rita going back on herself. You know, she had been an advocate for this change as something of liberation for this person, and maybe it would change society to, oh, you know, maybe she's just a criminal like the one before and she's going to kill me. And Emilia says, but I'm happy now and I want you to bring the kids back. And asked to, and she does. She wins her over with that. There are a couple other songs that are more like a musical where Jessie sings about her gilded prison, you know, and calls Gustavo, and they have this this song. She leaves a message for Gustavo. They have a song later that's very much like Emilia's what she says in the song she sings, because Jessie and Gustavo sing this, I want to be there for you. You know, you're the only one for me. They're looking for the same kind of love that Emilia is, and that Rita has probably given up thinking she will ever enjoy. And I thought that was an ironic parallel, and of course it's more ironic because they bring about their deaths. There's another song that was quite like a musical, and that's when one of the sons notices, you smell like my father. And he goes through all the things you smell like. And it's almost like these are my favorite things, you know, from Sound of Music, but you think she's going to be discovered. But at the end, the boy's asleep and she's weeping, sobbing in bed. I forget the final lyrical thing the boy says, but it leaves her missing her, you know, she wishes she didn't have to do this, but at least she's with her son. And that humanized her quite a bit for me, this unspoken weeping. And we know what it comes out of. It's like she'll never be able to come clean with her son that she is still his father somewhere. So that happens about midway in the song. And then we start with the bribing the prisoners to gather clues about where the bodies are buried, the disappeareds. You know, it happened in Italy and in Argentina, where authoritarian governments killed people and they had mass graves. The Nazis weren't the only one who did it. The people who did it. And there's even a great film. I've tried to get it for us. Can't find it anywhere. It's called Missing, starring Jack Lemmon, who goes to Argentina to discover his son. And he knows his son was one of the people that was gathered up in a soccer stadium. And I forget who plays opposite him. It's a woman.
Sissy Spacek.
It was Sissy Spacek. That makes sense.
And it's Costa Gavras.
Yes, right. Another very political director. And but it's not out, it's not streaming anywhere, and you can't even get a DVD. So I'll keep on the lookout for it. We'll have to content ourselves with The Apartment with Jack Lemmon instead until I can get that, which is also a great film. But let's stay with this film for a while. And it's interesting when we see the line of people parading through Emilia's haven for finding missing relatives. There's some testimonials in song with people saying why they're there. There's an ex-gangster who says, I'm here because I want to come clean and I live happily with my kids. So that echoes Emilia's predicament. So I'm going to help. I'm just here to help because I'll help the search. And then there's somebody else who sings after him. I do want to point out this humanization of Emily when she tells Rita that when I was hugging Epiphania, it's the first time I loved myself. Why? Because she was in a complete loving relationship without having consummated it. It was more like somebody needed me and accepted me for who I am, and I comforted that person. And it's something that Emilia couldn't have with her kids or Jesse anymore. So let's move ahead. These songs are just so remarkable. Oh, that scene where she dances at on the tables at the gala, the fundraising gala, where we're going to make these creeps pay for what they've done. How does that scene end? Do you remember? Is an earthquake shaking the chandelier.
Chandeliers, yeah.
Yeah. Well, what's an earthquake? It's an act of God, isn't it? It's the divine eye in the sky is saying, I know what you people have done. But I thought that was a very clever touch. I'm sure that's what they meant. Maybe you didn't see it that way, but it goes nowhere after that. That's the end of the scene. But that was a great dance. And oh, I know. Who was it who said it's like they were speaking, but there was music around it? These songs are very eloquent, not just explaining their frame of mind, but their decision making. So it's not they follow their own story, the songs, and that's why they're so persuasive and seem like they're so much a part of the film. Then there's another song where it ends up in a three-way split screen where Rita has to be the go-between. Jesse's taking the kids and Emilia's furious, and she has to, like, all you mediating lawyers know that you have to calm the people down before you can make any progress with them. She's trying to do that. And of course she fails at the end, because Emilia won't give up. And that of course leads to the horrible ending. And she's kidnapped. The fingers are delivered. And it's a very sweet moment when they realize this together. I think it's Emilia who says, time flew so fast for us. This intermediate period from the sex change to this moment where everything that they've worked for is threatened was meaningful for both of them. There's another moment where Rita's looking kind of down and says, I don't have kids. There's no one else in my life.
There's no life.
Bad about myself. And then
Rita never had a life.
Emilia says, this is your professional life. You do have a professional life, this organization. And she says, thank you. It's not quite sufficient. But again, keeps her in play, as an empathetic person. I don't want to go into the ending too much right now, but there are two final songs which I think are worth talking about. During the gun battle, right, Emilia sings a song to Jessie and reveals to her that he used to be Montez, and about I was dating your sister, but I only had eyes for you, and we kissed, and then we went upstairs and did the rest. And how could you know that? And he talks about, I gave you two necklaces as a wedding present. And suddenly Jessie has to do a switch. And she doesn't want to go along with Gustavo, but she does. She's forced to. And of course, he pistol whips her in the car. But again, that happened in song. It didn't happen in speech. And it's a very sweet song. And I was very moved by it. And then the final song is the funeral march, where everyone is paying a testimonial to the deceased Emilia, because she found their loved ones. She fought a righteous fight. So I'll leave it with that. I thought this was an even better film when I saw it this afternoon than when I saw it the first time. There's so much there. It's so richly told. And it's great because I just saw Wicked the other day. And if you haven't seen Wicked, you must, because it's not a piece of fluff. It's a serious movie. And there's serious character changes going on for both Elphaba and what's her name? Dorothy.
Linda.
And the scenic design and the music and the dance is stunning. It will knock you out. So I highly encourage you to see that. And Nora, Anora. It's about a lap dancer who marries the teenage son of Russian oligarchs, and they come after them. And it's not what you think it is. It's 45 minutes of lap dancing and nudity, and drugs, and then it changes. And I don't want to tell you how it changes, but you feel so much different at the end. It's a journey, and it's her transformation. And it's one of these energetically told, very stylistic film. And isn't it interesting that Wicked and this film and Anora, suddenly this storytelling is becoming part of the appeal, right? It's like the visual storytelling becomes part of the story. And this is good filmmaking when that happens. And I'm glad that all three of them are getting recognized. Does anybody have any concluding comments? Any final? I mean, we can keep talking. Judy?
Well, two things. While you were talking, I looked up Missing, and it is available for purchase for $28 from Criterion Collection.
Uh-huh.
And I also saw a really extraordinary film that I am sure is going to get at least an Oscar nomination for Best International Film, if not the award, called I'll Be There, or is it I'll Be Here? I'll Be There. It's a Brazilian film, and it's the same basic theme as Missing.
Uh-huh.
That a father is disappeared. It's a brilliant film that I highly recommend to everyone.
Is this the one directed by Walter Salles?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, that is being talked about.
Yeah, it's brilliantly done. But Missing is available from Criterion Collection.
I just didn't feel that I could ask everybody in the group to pay $28 for it.
Oh, that's true, because you're right, because
I mean, in the past, when I worked with the LA Jewish Films Festival, may they rest in peace, but they're still going. We would make duplicate copies and pass them around like a telephone tree, and from one house to the other.
Yeah.
And it's like, no,
you don't do that.
No. So,
theoretically, it was on Amazon Prime, but then when I clicked on that, it said this is currently not available.
Yeah, there's a lot of that. No, there's a film I wanted to see called White Bird, which is a young adult novel about a girl in the Holocaust. It was god awful. And when they first released it on Amazon, it was $20.
Wow.
And now it's $6.99. They do that. They think, they're going to clean up in the beginning, and they don't. There's no chance in hell that film's going to go anywhere. And even the studio abandoned it. I know from somebody on the inside, they just didn't market it at all because they knew it was a loser. But there's no reason that a young adult film can't be meaningful. It's just this one was so ham-fisted. It was an insult to young adults, frankly. Anybody else seen anything good? Paul.
Actually, I just had a question.
Go ahead. Go ahead. You muted yourself again.
There. Okay, you can hear me now.
Yeah.
The question I have for you is, Jim, would you consider the ending tragic? Does it rise to that or low?
Yeah, I felt sad that she got killed. And Jessie, who was about to redeem herself, got killed. Gustavo didn't care about. Rita, who saw her best friend in the world die in the crash, says, well, at least I have the kids, and I'll be the best substitute parent they'll ever have. And so there's some justice in that. It's not just a gruesome, nobody wins. I mean, there's comfort in the loss because the kids will have a supportive woman, helping them grow up. So, I try not to give labels because when you give a label to a film, you deny its originality and uniqueness. And I just hate these reviews or these people say, well, it was like this film or that film. It's like, no, this should be a unique film, and those of you, I love to tell this to my students, Wim Wenders, who did Perfect Days, which we discussed, that Zen film about cleaning toilets in Tokyo. Somebody asked him once, how do you make a good film? And he said, well, you make a film that only you could make. Which means you have the language, you have the feelings, it comes from you, you're an expert on that subject. So make a film about what you know and what you're connected to. And people will recognize they couldn't have imagined that on their own. And so that's what labels do. They destroyed the distinctive thinking that goes into these films that move us so much. It's actually, once you're making a film like this, you're just so passionately into it. You stop thinking about it, you just do it. And the momentum of the production gives you new ideas while you're shooting it and while you're editing it. So it's a wonderful process, but you don't, Wim Wenders' words don't have to echo in your head when you're on the set shooting it. It's too late for that. But when you write the script, that's what should be going through your head. Steve Zimmerman.
Just to the other question, I would just say that it's definitely a tragedy, if you ask me. I mean, if you analyze all the different characters, I mean, think about it. The kids are left without a mother or a father. The people died in the car. The guy driving, Gustavo, I think his name was,
yes, right.
He doesn't understand what's going on, why he's grabbing the steering wheel.
I don't think he would anyway.
Jessie, for her part, wasn't being heard because she just discovered that there was her husband in the trunk after all, and she can't successfully communicate that fact to Gustavo. Emilia in the trunk, of course, is just going to die, and although originally she wanted to live. So I don't know. Any way you look at it, I think I see it as a sort of a tragic opera.
Okay, I mean, it was tragic. Okay, if you people are up for it, we're going to try and have 2 screenings in January. I don't know what they're going to be. New films will become available. Sing Sing is definitely high on my list. This is a Coleman Domingo film about a theater troupe in a prison and how it changes them. And he's going to be nominated again. And I don't know if any of you saw this film with Gary Busey, Nick Nolte, called Weeds, about a theater group inside a prison. And I've tried to find that. I forget who directed it, but I haven't been able to find that. But the Sing Sing and there's one other, Honora, all the contenders won't stream until after the Oscars because there'll be a bump in sales, whether it's online or in theaters for them if they get a nomination.
We saw a film recently streaming. It's called Il Treno dei Bambini, which is fabulous.
Okay.
It's during World War II, and it is taking children from Sicily who are starving and bringing them to northern Italy for a type of 3 to 4 month vacation. And a subplot is one of the children becoming a famous violinist because of this experience.
What's the title of it again, Charles?
Il Treno dei Bambini.
Children's train.
The Children's Train.
The Children's Train, okay.
And the other thing I was thinking was that in the movie, in this movie, each one of the characters was showing the different parts that exist inside each one of us.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's what I meant about the humanism of this film. It's like, you know, you can judge any one of them, but the film points to treating everybody as a whole person, even though there may be paradoxes inside that person. If we long for too much closure in a movie, we're never going to see another one again. Okay, so I thought this was a great discussion. I'm so glad so many people joined us. We got a bunch, and Lynn, all the new people, Lynn Weissman, and who else? Well, they're not on anymore. And Charles, great to have you with us. Look forward to more with you and your wife. And you'll hear from me with the news. Oh, hi, Barbara Balaban. Sorry, way back there. So see you next month and have a happy Hanukkah, New Year, and, you know,
Happy
safe travels.
holidays.
Happy holidays.
Yes, that's a good way of putting it.
Menach and all
Take
that.
care. Bye.
Thank you,
Bye.
Jim. Thank you.
Welcome.
Thanks, Jim.
Yeah.